Welcome back to another edition of the Here We Go podcast. This is an extra episode today as it's Saturday morning. Big game today, obviously. We got the Ravens in Baltimore. Big day for football because for me personally, I'm going to be going back-to-back watching hopefully us beat our division rival, win the AFC North crown, and then move on to Ohio State and Tennessee in the shoe. It's going to be a great day of football. But I'm not going to be talking about that today. What I'm going to be talking about is actually Diontae Johnson. This is becoming a bit of a hot topic online, something that I wanted to get my thoughts out on and just see what everybody else thinks. And so it's easy to talk on social media and kind of go back and forth, but there's characters involved, blah, 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 blah. So I wanted to give full thoughts on this and see if anybody thinks my justification makes any sense or if they're still going to hold stand on whatever their belief was prior to me putting this video out. Let's dive right into exactly how I feel about Diontae Johnson. So number one, dating back to last year, I was fully in favor of benching Diontae Johnson after that fumble against Cincinnati, where he just basically watched it roll on top of his shoelace, does not make an attempt to the ball, and walks off the field. That's not what happened. And I think that's become a really big knock on how Mike Tomlin handles players. And I know he handles everybody differently, and some guys get special treatment. And I know he tries to do this thing where he, adjusts to the personality of the player, and you can push certain guys certain ways and other guys other ways. I mean, at some point, accountability has got to hold up in the organization, which is why I wanted him benched. Everybody said we can't do without our number one wide receiver. Oh, we got to get to the playoff. We benched Diontae. I don't know. We're not going to be able. George Pickens has been playing all season this year by himself in the wide receiver room. Calvin Austin has made some nice plays. I think a lot of his route concepts are designed to get him open, not so much that he's getting himself open. At times he is. At times he's winning his routes. But in large part, let's be honest, George Pickens is playing by himself at wide receiver. He could have done that for a game last year. As a matter of fact, I was also on board with benching George Pickens when he refused to block for Jaylen Warren in what should have been a touchdown, but instead was a ball where he gets tackled on the 2 or 3 yard line, and we did not score that touchdown. These plays can mean the game. And when players refuse to be team first, you have to have some level of accountability in the organization. When the Steelers traded Diontae Johnson in the offseason, I, like many fans, thought there's got to be a plan in place to replace him. There's a lot of guys out there. We can get someone. It's no big deal. Made perfect sense to trade for a corner. At the time, it was such a hot topic. I've gone through that at length many times. Not going to rehash the trade itself. But what I will say is that it made sense at the time. We sent Diontae Johnson into NFL purgatory because the Carolina Panthers have been one of the worst run organizations for quite some time, to be perfectly honest with you. The Steelers just never replaced him. They put all their chips into one bag with the Brandon Ayuk saga. They let it drag on for far too long. At some point, I talked about it in the offseason. They needed to really push his hand and say, look, buddy, we can't keep waiting on you. Either you're going to pull the trigger on this thing and demand your trade, or we got to move on and fill our roster out. But that never happened. Probably the one and biggest mistake of Omar Khan's early career as a GM. I don't know that I can criticize too much of what he's done so far in 2 years. But that was definitely one that I felt like was on him. So let's fast forward through the season a little bit. George Pickens, again, like I said just a little bit ago, he's had no help in the receiver room. You cannot have Van Jefferson being the wide receiver 2 in this offense. I mean, he's just not good. I don't care what offense the play style may be. You can never have Van Jefferson, a guy that 31 other teams wanted nothing to do with, as your wide receiver 2. Guys didn't even want him as their wide receiver 3. He is our 2. That's a huge, huge hole to make up for as an offense. And we want to talk about, why isn't the run game better? This is Arthur Smith's offense, and Arthur Smith does this run game, blah, 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 blah. You know why the run game isn't effective? There is no George Pickens. It is 2 rookies starting on an offensive line with a second-year right tackle who struggled for the first half of the season. And there is no threat to pass the football outside of George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth. You need another threat to keep defenses honest. You need someone on the outside that a team respects. They don't even need to put a safety over the top ever against Van Jefferson. He's never winning downfield. Never. That 4.32 speed he ran in the combine is long gone because it is not there now. It doesn't show up. You needed a second wide receiver. You still need a second wide receiver. You've lost George Pickens now for this is going to be the 3rd game. And the first 2, the offense has not looked good. It was check downs to running backs for big yardage against Cincinnati. Pat Freiermuth finally is starting to get the ball a little bit more. He's actually having a pretty decent season. You know, I know we all talked about he should be getting the ball more. I actually expected him to get a little bit more than what he's gotten it. But as of right now, he's the only other threat in the pass game, and now he's the only threat in the pass game. It's not good. Diontae Johnson, whether you like it or not, whether you like the fact that he left the way he left, that he acted the way he acted, that guy is a top 5 route runner in the NFL. The situation that he has gone through this year, to any normal human being, and I hope to God Diontae Johnson is a normal human being, has got to be a wake-up call. It is a sheer slap in the face that not one organization traded you, but 2 in the same season. Followed up by a team that picked you up because you're a division rival. Now they want to get rid of you. They cut you, outright cut you. I don't know who his agent is, but they need to get in Diontae's ear and say, dude, you got to straighten up or you're not getting any type of contract in this offseason. It is in Diontae's best interest and Pittsburgh's best interest to get back together and make this thing work, if nothing else, just for the rest of the season. Make it work for the remainder of the season, and then Diontae can look at getting a contract either in Pittsburgh, not likely, or somewhere else. That is the best case scenario for both the Steelers, who are trying to make a push this year. How do we know they've been trying to make a push? Mr. Rooney talked about it. Coach Tomlin talked about it. Arthur Smith and Terrell Austin have talked about it. They brought Russell Wilson in here for 1 year for one reason: to try to get back to a Super Bowl. They brought Justin Fields. They made that trade for Justin Fields for one reason. These guys are on 1-year deals. They're not part of the long-term plan right now. Are they possibly? Yeah, sure, possibly. But right now they're not. This is supposed to be an all-in type thing. We spent so much resources on the offensive line to give us that shot. Bringing in guys like Patrick Queen on the defense, Deshaun Elliott, bringing back Cam Sutton As controversial as that was at the time, and still really probably is, I was very critical of it. These are moves the organization was making to win now, not tomorrow, not in 2026, right now. And no other move would make more sense to win now than the one that gets Van Jefferson the hell off the field and put in a guy who can get open regardless of play call and help move this offense downfield. Russell Wilson needs help. He cannot survive and carry this team by himself. He's not that guy anymore. Colin and I talked about this a ton. He is a great, and I mean a freaking great game manager. He is not the guy who elevates the guys around him. He never has been. Seattle found guys that worked to his strengths. Denver tried to run an offense that did not run to Wilson's strengths. That's why it didn't work. We need Russell Wilson, the elite game manager, who can only do that if he's got guys who can help him. Diontae Johnson would be that guy. You need to go get him. I don't care about the past. I mean, I do to some degree. But listen, folks, you're a 10-4, football team trying to make a push. You're in the playoff. Do not be a one-round bounce because you run out Van Jefferson, Scotty Miller, and Mike Williams, who still can't get involved in the offense. And for those of you still saying it, he's out there. He's not getting open. Mike Williams is a one-trick pony who goes downfield and plays the ball really well in the air, but if you have no other passing offense around him, he cannot be effective. You have to give him the deep shots in order for him to convert the deep shots. We can't take deep shots because there's no one getting open underneath. If you ran out your top four receivers as George Pickens, Diontae Johnson, Calvin Austin, Mike Williams, you have a shot. If you do not add to this wide receiver room, you do not have a shot of being successful in the playoff anywhere near in the same capacity. The efficiency of the offense is not going to be there. You're going to have to win through attrition. And we saw when you play a team that's as physical as we are, like the Eagles, attrition doesn't work because they were more physical. So I think as a fan base, we need to throw the shit about Diontae that we think out the window and understand that Diontae Johnson is still a top 5 route runner in this league. He was wildly successful with a competent quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger. He would be very successful with a guy like Russell Wilson who knows how to use him. And if no one else on this roster wanted him back in the locker room, Russell Wilson should be the one voice to say, guys, give me some help. I can work with him. I can nurture him. I can take him under my wing. He's done great things with George Pickens' attitude by propping him up week after week after week after week. Diontae would not be the same problem because he would be getting the ball. There's plenty to go around between him and George Pickens. You need the second threat on the offensive side of the football, or you're not going to move the ball effectively as we continue to face stiffer competition. I would have that waiver claim in, ready to go, and I would welcome him back to Pittsburgh with open arms, with the understanding that, dude, you've got to mend some fences here. Things between he and Minka Fitzpatrick did not go well. Trubisky's not here anymore. That's not an issue. But he owes an apology to some of these veteran players like Cam Hayward, like TJ Watt, like Minka Fitzpatrick. Hell, even guys like Dan Moore, Isaac Seumalo. Veteran guys on offense that were here. Najee Harris. And Jaylen Warren. I mean, I don't see how Diontae's career gets resurrected, because I don't know how many teams are going to be interested in him. I'm sure there's going to be a few that feel like they're a piece away and they can deal with him for the next 4 to 5 games or whatever it might be for their playoff run. You know, maybe the Rams have some interest. I don't know. I don't know. But I'm just saying, he's familiar with Pittsburgh, even though it's a different offensive coordinator. Diontae does not strike me as a guy who's dumb. I think he's a pretty intelligent player. He could pick this offense up rather quickly. We don't have to worry about jumping on the moving train, as Tomlin likes to throw out there with a guy like that, because he's familiar with Tomlin. He's familiar with a lot of the coaching staff that's still here, and he can incorporate himself into the offense rather quickly. Anyone who thinks differently, I would love to hear from after you listen to this. I do not ever in my life as a Steeler fan want to see a wide receiver room that's anywhere near as bad as running out Van Jefferson as your default wide receiver 1, Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller, and Mike Williams. With, oh, by the way, Ben Skoranek had one of the best plays of the entire group, who's supposed to be just a special teams guy and in there to block. I mean, that should tell you the state of the wide receiver room, if nothing else does. Get the deal done unless someone else has a higher waiver claim priority than the Steelers do. There's absolutely no reason we don't do this. You got to throw everything out the window, and you have to try to win. This is the best chance we've had in a long time. Russell Wilson needs some damn help. The running game needs some help. You've got to back defenses off the line of scrimmage. You do that by having a threat on the outside. You do that better with 2 threats on the outside. You see what the running game is without George Pickens. Imagine if you get George and Diontae, where you have a threat to throw and go deep at any time, get guys open at any time from either side of the field. Plus, you have Calvin Austin, who can burn you down the middle. Plus, a top 10 tight end. And Muth can be a top 10 tight end, no question about it. He's up in there in a lot of categories right now. You're a piece away from being a much better offense. Diontae's the only piece that's going to be out there. You can make an argument for OBJ. OBJ's not the same player anymore, in my opinion. I think he's still better than what we have. But if you want to talk about making a move over a guy bringing drama to the locker room, OBJ's not bringing any less drama than Diontae Johnson, so go get the guy you're familiar with, who is much younger and still much more athletic. Get the deal done. Let's get a win in Baltimore. Let's get the AFC North crown. Let's start resting some guys so we can get healthy going into the postseason. That's all I got for today, folks. As always, please like, share, subscribe, leave comments. Leave your comments so I know what your thoughts are on this thing, so I can try to understand where you're coming from. Do you like the content? Do you not like the content? Do you want me to do things a little bit differently? I'm really curious to hear from you. Thank you for listening, as always. Hope y'all have a fantastic football Saturday.